Springwatch is back and there's so much going on.
It certainly was a busy week last week, so just in case you missed anything, here's a quick catch-up.
The Mother Stoat was seen moving house.
Our fledgling wrens were teetering on the edge.
And our lonesome stickleback went missing in the mud.
Who knows what lies in store this week? Welcome to a wild and windy Springwatch.
Yes, hello and welcome to Springwatch 2015. It's our second week and we're coming to you live from the very, very windy Minsmere. We're going to take Bob Dylan's advice and find some shelter from the storm in here. Over the weekend, things were much nicer than they are now, and our cameramen were out and they got some lovely images of the wildlife here. Just look at this. Down on the scrape, avocets were active, the young ones, and the adults too. Cygnets have already hatched from their eggs. Rabbits, well, they were doing rabbit stuff on the short turf, watched by the fox eagerly, of course. And look at this, Dartford warbler, one of the males. And again on that short turf, greater spotted woodpecker probing for ants, dragonflies. This is a fantastic place to be. 10 square kilometres, a great mosaic of habitats, 5,000 different species. We aim to bring you the very best of British wildlife using our 30 or so live cameras. We show you some beautiful things like that. We also want to unpack some new science as well. But where are we going to do it? Well, here is where we are. Here's a map of England. Here is East Anglia over here, so you've got London down here somewhere. Basically, here's the conurbation of Ipswich, and you've got Norwich here, Cathedral City, and we're out on the North Sea coast here, Minsmere. Fantastic place.
Now, of course, despite the weather, our live cameras are all up and running out there. Let's go to one of them right away. Let's go to the bearded tit. Now, let's have a look. I'm surprised, actually, it's not moving around as much as I thought. There is the female. She's busy incubating, which they've hatched out, actually. We know there are chicks under there. Oh, she might give us a peep. We're not sure how many chicks there are. Both the male and female take it in turns to incubate. We've not been able to see fully underneath to know what's going on.
She's a pretty little thing, isn't she, Martin? I mean, not as striking as the male, but...
No, she hasn't got those black moustaches down sort of around her face. But those chicks underneath there will take about 12 to 13 days to fledge. So with a bit of luck, we may see them leave that nest.
And these are real reed bed specialists, aren't they? Along with the bittern, the marsh harrier, maybe the water rails. This is what people come to Minsmere to see, and to have a view like that is incredibly special.
Let's hope they're all right, actually, the next few days, if it's going to be this windy.
Well, it's going to blow and blow. Yeah, I think they will.
Should we have a look at the
Let's have another look. Yeah, our blue tits. Here we go. They're doing really well. They seem to accelerate so fast their development later on. I think they'll go in, what do you think, Chris, in a week or so?
Within this week, I think.
Within this week.
Yeah, look at them, pretty active. Flight feathers are coming down.
Doing really well. We've been having reports from around the country that blue tits generally don't seem to be doing very well. So we're very happy that ours are doing so well, maybe because of this peculiar spring that we're having, this harsh weather.
And there are 10 of them. So it's a really good brood, isn't it?
It is, it's fantastic. They're doing very well.
We may see them fledge this week, so keep your eyes on the cameras. We always get very excited when we see our chicks fledge. So did we manage to see our wrens fledge over the weekend? Well, let's take a look. This is what they were looking like on Saturday. Very eager, very keen. They've been doing a lot of wing stretching, poking their noses out of the nest. So did they go away? Well, eventually the female comes in and almost sort of says, come on, guys, come out. So Sunday at 6:58 a.m, after a quick preen, one pops out.
They do encourage them out, don't they, Michaela, by stopping feeding.
And that was happening. That was noticed by our nest watchers. Second one fledges. It's a good job that little twig's there, isn't it? Something for them to bounce onto. And then we've got number 4 comes out, and I love that little hairdo. Look at that, it's been squashed in that nest for far too long. Number 5, There's just one left, looking out thinking, shall I stay in here all cosy or shall I go into the big wide world? And it thinks, yep, I think I'll pop out 12 minutes later. So all 6 successfully fledged. The mother did extremely well with them all. The mother we called Sophia Loren. And look at that, not very far from the nest. This is typical for wrens. They'll come out the nest and spend maybe up to a couple of weeks in close proximity to the nest. The mother comes in again, gives them a little feed. And do you know, I've seen them around the production village. I've seen them doing a little bit of flying. It was on Saturday, I think, so they weren't terribly good at flying, but they were certainly giving it a go, and obviously they'll get better.
Did you hear them zwirring?
Zwirring?
Zwirring, yes.
What's a zwirring?
Zwir is today's spring word. Zwir, Z-W-E-R.
Okay.
It means the whirring or whizzing noise made by birds when they break from cover or when they take off. It's an imitative word from a Somerset dialect.
Do you know, I didn't hear them zwirring because they're quite noisy, so I heard them tweeting before they zwirred.
You heard us whir, which is good. Well, if one of our nests fledged, it meant that we needed to be busy finding something else. So over the course of the weekend, we did go out looking for other nests and we found something really, really special. It's on the edge of the reserve. We're going to have the cameras up later in the week for 24 hours a day. And let me tell you, if you're nocturnal, I'm sure you enjoy some really good views of these birds. A bit more of them coming up later.
There was lots of amazing stuff this weekend going on, actually, at Minsmere, and I was showing some friends around the reserve, and we got brilliant views of our stoat, which we're very privileged because last week we've seen this stoat just behind the studio here on the grass, seen quite a lot of it, and they're usually incredibly shy, so we're very lucky. Well, our cameramen were also out over the weekend filming, and have a look at what they got. Now, we presumed this was the female that we've been watching. And then magpie comes in. It's interesting. So although the magpie is close to us, you can still see how small that stoat is in comparison to the very large bird. Then it bounces off, and we thought, oh, it looks a bit stockier than the female. And then if you have a close look at its rear, you can very clearly see that it is a male with its bouncing testicles there. And then it sees this rabbit, and then, look, watch what happens with the rabbit. Now, remember, the stoat would take the rabbit's young and, in fact, even go for that rabbit, despite the fact that it's almost 10 times its size. So the rabbit chases it off. Now, we think this could well be the father of the kits that we've seen. We've seen the female stoat take kits out of one part of the grasslands into another, into a den. So that could be the father.
It could be. Male stoats have ranges which encompass that of several females, and the females will try and mate with more than one stoat. So there could be more than one roaming male out there, but the fact that it's going in the same set of burrows seems to indicate that it was definitely involved at some stage, I would say.
Fantastic to see.
If you're watching last week, you'll know that you don't need sharks to have something special. You can have something special with a very much smaller fish, a thing called a 3-spined stickleback. Spineless Si was our unexpected star last week when we found him just down there in a little shallow dike that runs out to the island of Mere Hyde. He was having a torrid time, if I'm very honest with you. He built a nest, you see, down in the silt, and he was tending that nest and trying to get females to go into it to lay their eggs. But sadly, one night, an otter stamped through, Otterzilla, crushed his nest and buried everything in a shower of silt. But Si was tenacious. He came back, he rebuilt the nest, and he tended it. He added material, and he managed to tempt females to the gate. But unfortunately, he was slightly over-attentive, and they never produced the goods. Look at him here. He just won't leave her alone. And of course, by the end of the week, he had failed to get a single female into his nest. The whole country was rooting for Spineless Si. They were watching something else on another channel, but it wasn't as interesting as this, I can assure you. Then, on the very last day, on Thursday, we found this. One of our viewers had taken this photograph of a bittern, and that's right next to the camera where Spineless was hanging out. And then Spineless disappeared. We didn't know what happened. We put another camera down in the stream. We tried to find Si. What we did find was not him, but this chap. So this is just a few centimetres away from where Si was hanging out. This is another stickleback. You can see altogether redder, and he has a far more impressive nest. Look at this.
It's a palace.
Much larger. And he manages to lure a female. The difference is that she goes straight into that nest, pushing herself through, and in the process, laying some eggs. Now this chap stays there, waiting for her to pass through, because immediately afterwards he's got to squeeze into the nest and fertilise those eggs. And look, he knows exactly what he's doing. And he's no doubt fertilised those now, and they are a very, very valuable commodity. So he's looking after them, he's fanning his pectoral fins here, pushing fresh water through, plenty of oxygen for those eggs inside, they're going to need that. And of course the other thing he's doing is guarding them from any other sticklebacks, because when they eat the eggs, it increases their redness and thus their chances of attracting a female. So look at this, he's driving off this other male. He doesn't want him anywhere near the eggs at all. Jules Howard has been talking to us about sticklebacks and giving us lots of stickleback facts. So there we are. I think we should call that stickleback Frisky Phil.
Frisky Phil?
Frisky Phil.
He is frisky.
Frisky Phil. He's pretty frisky.
He's very, very
he scored
good.
lots of females. That was just one down there. He had several. I forget, we lost count in the end. Yeah. So there were plenty of eggs down in that nest, which is going to be really interesting to watch that. And, of course, to see what happens with Si.
Well, yes. What of Spinous Si? Was that the end? You know, it seemed that he disappeared. So, more in hope, we just moved the camera very slightly from its original position. And then, look at this. He's back!
He's back!
As my niece would say, him is alive! And not only that, look how red he is, and his eye is blue, and I'm feeling quite hopeful for him now. You know, he might get lucky, he might find a mate. I'm rooting for Spinous Si. This is fascinating because we've now got 2 cameras down there, and we can compare the behaviour of Spinous Si. I keep wanting to call him Fidgety Phil, but it's
Frisky Phil.
Frisky Phil.
I hope that Spinous Si has been watching Frisky Phil and maybe he's got
Picking
a few
up
tips there.
He didn't
Fishy
get his
tips.
redness. He's much redder
He's
than we last
much
saw.
redder now. Yeah, he's looking
And
great.
they do get that redness from their food. It's a carotenoid pigment which they get from their food. So he's either been eating another stickleback's eggs, maybe Frisky Phil's, or he's been eating the right sort of food, and he's building up that redness. What he's now got to do is improve his zigzag dance, and that's what we're going to be watching over the next few days. Zigzag dance.
Zigzag dance. Now, I'm going to go down to the production village, which is just over there, where all the camera feeds, including Fidgety Phil, I'm never going to get that right. Frisky Phil are coming into, and I'm going to show you the nerd centre of Springwatch. So I'll see you a bit later.
See you later.
Frisky.
Well, from the wilds of Suffolk to central London, which probably isn't the first place that springs to mind when you think of the nation's favourite mammal. But as I found out, there's one oasis where the little guys are hanging on.
Regent's Park, a highly sought-after, desirable location in central London.
And I don't just mean for humans. If you're a hedgehog, then Regent's Park is the place to be. In fact, it's the only place to be, because in recent years there's been no sightings of hedgehogs in any other park in central London, which is really surprising. So what on earth is going on?
Across the country, hedgehogs are declining by a staggering 5% every year. Without urgent action, they could be extinct in the UK by 2025. Habitat fragmentation, loss of hedgerows, an increase in pesticides and conflict with badgers are all taking their toll. But it's not just a problem in rural areas. Our city hogs are also struggling. I'm meeting Nigel Reeve at the start of the 2015 Regent's Park Hedgehog Survey to find out what's going on.
So tonight we're going on a mission.
Yes.
Talk me through what's going to happen.
So, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be going out in the field. We'll be looking for hedgehogs. We'll be marking them individually with little coloured plastic tags on their spines.
Yep.
We'll be taking samples of spines for a genetic analysis that we're doing, and we'll radio tag a few of them.
And we need a high-vis jacket. That's so we can see each other, isn't it, in the dark?
That's right.
Not because the hedgehogs might attack us or anything.
No, it's so we don't get lost.
It's estimated that there are only 50 hedgehogs in Regent's Park, a small and very vulnerable population for an area of this size. To track them down, we need to walk quietly and listen for telltale rustling in the undergrowth.
50 hedgehogs, large park, and it's dark. I think we could be here for some time.
After an hour of searching, we get lucky.
Hello, little prickly man.
There we go.
To minimise stress to the animal, we immediately start our list of checks. First, we need to sex them.
I'm not very experienced with looking at hedgehogs' nether regions. It's not something I do very often.
Apparently this one's a male. Then we weigh, measure, attach a marker and take spine samples for DNA analysis.
This is the GPS tag. What this will do is log the position of the animal every 10 minutes or so.
The tracking data will help the team understand how hedgehogs make use of this urban space. It could then be used by city parks across the UK, which want to become more hedgehog friendly.
150 with the yellow tags.
It's time for the hedgehogs to be released.
Stiff knees, eh?
Yes, I know. Did you hear them?
It doesn't take long for the hogs to return to their nocturnal foraging. An hour later, we go back to check that the GPS tags are working.
Yeah. Now, the signal is definitely getting stronger, so we're in the right direction.
Oh, there we go, there we go, there we go,
You can
look.
see it.
Yes. That's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
So how many years has this study been going on, Nigel? This is the second year?
This is the second year of the study, yeah.
So what have you found out so far?
Quite a lot, really. I mean, not only do we have an estimate of roughly how many hedgehogs there are here, but we've also been looking at how far they move each night.
And how far is it?
Around 800 metres to a kilometre each night.
The team's research also shows that hedgehogs will actively avoid areas of short grass, such as football pitches and lawns, preferring to forage in more overgrown areas with lots of shrubbery.
Nigel, why do you think that Regent's Park is the last stronghold for hedgehogs within London?
Well, it may be down to chance in that it just so happens that they've managed to hang on here. But also, I think the Regent's Park, it's a good big park, and it does have a remarkably diverse range of habitats here, and it does provide good nesting and feeding opportunities. And, you know, let's hope we can continue to have them here.
Nigel, I've lost them. They've gone. I think they've actually gone behind something.
I think the show may be over for tonight.
It's gone midnight.
Is it really?
I think it's time for a cup of cocoa, don't you?
That's the trouble with working with nocturnal animals, isn't it? Yes.
It's late. And we've already got some results from that tagged hedgehog, hedgehog 150. This is the map over 5 days of where he went. Now, this is his range, which is 11,000 square kilometres, which is about the size of 1.5 football pitches. Obviously, he didn't go round in a circle like that. He zigzagged across. So he travelled 6.2 kilometres. One night, Chris, he travelled 2 kilometres, which is quite a long way for a hedgehog with little legs, isn't it?
It is.
And you can see that he's kept within the park boundaries. Fortunately, he got close to the road but didn't go on the road, because that is a big problem for hedgehogs in any town or city. Once he goes on that road, then the chances of his survival are very slim.
And round there, look, he's literally reaching the pavement, isn't he?
He
And
is,
then
yeah.
not crossing.
He's right on the boundary. But they found out quite a lot in those 5 days. They found out that he was quite sexually active and that he had 2 nests, one just under a hedge and one by a tree. So in 5 days you can find out all that information if you tag him.
I was
Amazing.
really surprised that there was a population of 50 hedgehogs in Regent's Park. I thought it was
Really?
all, well, as I recall it, it was all, you know, flat grass, lawns and flower beds, not any habitat for hedgehogs.
No, there were quite a few wild areas. It's
Yeah,
good.
it is. And it's what we call a minimum viable population. Now, last week we were talking about hedgehogs, and we said they declined by 97%. That's pretty catastrophic, and mathematically, at least, they're heading for extinction. But if they've got these minimum viable populations, then they could hang on for a while. But exactly what is a minimum viable population? Well, it isn't just 2 animals. It's not one young male hedgehog and one old female, because they might not be able to breed. So you need more than just 2 to have that population. And by studying their breeding ecology and their population dynamics, we know that in urban areas we need somewhere between 32 and 60 hedgehogs occupying about 2.5 kilometres. It's relatively warm in cities, people put food out for them, and there are not lots of natural predators. But out in the countryside we need a lot more. We need somewhere between 130 and 150 hedgehogs in any population, covering an area of about 6 square kilometres to be minimally viable. But if it drops below that number, then in fact it's heading for extinction. There's nothing that population can get back. And of course, when they get that low, it's not some of the wider factors that affect them, like changes to the landscape and farming. It could be just the little things. Now, we know that badgers will eat hedgehogs. They don't go out looking for them. They're not a staple part of their diet, but if they find them, they eat them. And if you've got a minimum viable population and then badgers start eating them, they could just be the thing that pushes them over the edge. So we've really got to come together at this stage and start looking after our hedgehogs, particularly where we can, which is at home in our towns and cities.
In fact, last week we did an SOS asking you to do something to help hedgehogs, and there are very simple things you can do in your garden. Give them water, feed them, cat food is the best, and also make a hole in your fence so that you can make sort of wildlife corridors so they're not isolated just in your garden, which is obviously a disaster to make a viable population. Lots of you did get involved and told us about it on Twitter. For instance, Baggy's Guy on Twitter said, in response to the hedgehog SOS, we created a hole in our garden fence this morning. So that's absolutely fabulous. And if you haven't done one already, then get out in your garden. That'll be something to do this week.
Get the kids to go out with the football, just kick it against the fence like we used to as kids, until you make a hole in it and the neighbour comes round and speaks to your dad. But the hedgehogs are happy.
Now, Martin likes to roam a bit, doesn't it? And do you know what? I think he's snuffled off like a little hedgehog into the production village.
I like the way she sells me. Yes, I am. I'm in the production village, what we call the production village. Over there, that's the canteen, that tent. That's the production tent. They're all hidden away in here. There's where the camera team work and maintain all the cameras. But come down here, lots and lots of wires. This is cables absolutely everywhere. We've got about 20 kilometres of cables, but let's follow these cables. These are particularly interesting. They are coming to, I don't know if you can see me. Hello? You can. This is our wren camera. If we spin round, you can see the remains, well, the wren nest there. And that is what we've been following. They fledged, as we said, just recently, and there's nothing there. They won't be coming back. Okay, now let's watch what happens to the output of that camera. It goes back here, goes around here. It actually goes into this building, but then it comes out, it goes all the way around, goes along there, back here, and then it pops up here. Look at this, Spaghetti Junction. We think that that wren camera comes in somewhere around here, and I know for a fact that it's number 8, the feed there. I mustn't touch any of these. So there are 28 cameras all coming in here, the feeds, and one of them, how about this, is 4 kilometres, over 4 kilometres away from where I'm standing now. Let's go inside and see what happens when the feeds arrive. Here they are, the dedicated ones. This is Marcus. Hi, Marcus.
Hello.
Very nice. How long have you been watching the cameras today so far?
Since 4 p.m.
4 p.m. How long does it go on for?
Until 4 a.m.
4 a.m.
Yeah.
I hope they're feeding you well. Now, it's howling outside. Are you worried about any of the nests? Because they're probably blowing around a bit.
We have seen some nests blowing around, especially when it really gusts, the Dartford warbler, top left up there.
Oh, look,
really,
you can see it's moving now,
you can see it moving a bit,
Look
and that really is moving back and forth quite a bit when it's windy.
Okay, but it seems reasonable. We're going in. Let's have a close look there. Gosh, it really is moving. It's all hunkering. I wish the adults were there. Okay. Well, anyway, this is where they all come in. Let's have a look at the scrape cam there. Right in. We can see black-headed gulls there. Again, lots and lots of birds all on the scrape there, feeding away. Doesn't look too bad, but I can tell you it's blowing a hoolie down there. Right, and now let's have a look. Here he is. Where's Spineless? There he is! There's Spineless!
And he actually is actually there.
He's actually there, giving us a profile, looking great. Were you here when he came back?
We weren't. No, it was on the previous shift. We only just came back on shift at 4 p.m. At 4 p.m. today.
It's
so,
great.
But yeah, we were happy to see him back.
That's fantastic. And there's Phil as well. They're all there. Now, of course, we're not only getting the cameras on site here at Minsmere coming into this truck for these guys to watch. We're also getting the cameras from Bristol. Now there you go. You can see it. Sorry, there's the gull cam. It's stopped raining. We can go in. We can control it from up here. Really howling up there. And that, oh, look at that. She's trying to brood them. Gosh, that's quite worrying, actually. Now, how are we controlling that camera? We come on round here. Here's Joe. Now, that must be, what's that, Joe, 250 odd miles away?
It could be.
Could be. Mate, it's Bristol. It is, isn't it? You know, mate, I drove up here yesterday. But you can control it. Is there a delay here?
There is. It's quite long. It's about 2 seconds, I think.
2 seconds delay. Can we go round it? I mean, they are being blown around a bit, aren't they, down there? Oh, and it is rainy. It's covered in drips there. You can see all the buildings around there. If we go off to the right a little bit, you can. I think you can see the joystick takes us across to there's a Wills building. That's my hometown. There we go. Gosh, that looks absolutely miserable. OK, well, now we've got that, but in Bristol we've also got, of course, the Swifts. May we see our Swifts? Can we go outside? There we go. Gosh, that looks grim as well. But this house has got all these Swift boxes up outside. It's in the suburbs of Bristol. That's fantastic. I want to do that. Let's go inside. And there we are, there's a Swift. Doesn't seem to be all fluffed up, keeping its eggs, 3 eggs underneath her. Remember, her or him, no, not sure how you'd tell if it's male or female. But she's keeping those eggs nice and warm in these dreadful conditions. Now, we've been watching these Swifts and we've noticed something very, very curious. You may have seen this. Look on the feathers there. There's something that looks like a flattened fly, and that's exactly what it is. It's a flat fly. It's lost its wings and its body's become flattened, and it now lives on the Swift's body. Its feet are actually adapted. The end of each feet's got 3 little claws on it, and it can grip. And when the Swift goes flying around, it will hang on and it'll suck its blood. They're blood suckers. And what's absolutely fascinating is those adults know when the Swifts are going to migrate back to Africa, and they will lay eggs in the nest. The adults die, but the eggs wait until the Swifts come back the next year and reinfect them. That's a bit grim. And just to give you an idea, if I was the size of a Swift, they would be something like this, those flat flies. Imagine that all crawling around inside. Be hideous, wouldn't it, really? I don't really fancy that. Some of them have 2 or more on their bodies. Yuck. Now let's go back the other way. Now, let's have a look here. Now, if you look at those pictures in the middle, it's getting a little bit dark now, but you can see that log in the water. It's brightening up now. That is a brand new challenge that we've set up for the rodents here at Minsmere, and I'm going to leave this truck now and go out and show you that challenge and what we've set up. See you in a bit. Chris, Michaela.
Now, a lot of those nests that Martin was looking at were found last week, or some the week before, but over the weekend we found a brand new nest, and it's one we're very excited about. Have a look at where it is. This is where it is. It's in the oak tree. Look at that gorgeous sunset.
Those were the days at the
Oh,
weekend.
yes, we
Those
dream
were the
of those.
days.
And this is the nest. It's a nest of a barn owl. 3 owlets in there. This is one of the adults coming in to feed them. Now, we don't know whether this is the male or the female, but we did notice that it has a ring. So once we find out, we'll be able to tell the difference. Now, these 3 owlets were staggered in their hatching. It's staggered laying, staggered hatching. There's the other adult coming in. And as you can see, it doesn't have a ring on, so we'll be able to tell the difference, as I said. You can see there's one there that is clearly the last to come out. And there's a reason for that they stagger that hatching, because it means that it gives the older owlet a better chance of survival, because if times get tough, then it will eat its sibling.
It's interesting there are only 3 in that brood at the moment as well. Last year was a bumper year for barn owls. If you think back to 2013, we had a very cold spring. Most of the nests didn't have any eggs in, way into May, even early June. Then they laid a few clutches. Last year, we had a lovely spring. The owls really bounced back, so it'll be interesting to see what's going on this year. But we've also been watching these owls away from the nest using our thermal camera. Here's a view of one of the adults hunting. And they use this quartering technique, flying over rough grassland, principally looking for small mammals, field voles, occasional shrews. You can see the hot eyes of the owl there, its warm feet as well. It's flying over this area, listening for any small rustle in the grass, using that heart-shaped disc, which is effectively its ears. Down it goes. On this occasion, it's unsuccessful. But a little later, we saw the other member of the pair returning to the nest, clearly carrying prey. Here it comes. Look at the talons here. Now, we studied this, but we couldn't quite make out what it was at this stage. But of course, the benefit is we've got that other camera in the nest. So as soon as the bird comes in, here it is, hopping in, and you can see it was indeed a small mammal that's delivered to these couple of lovely little chicks in there.
One thing we're really excited about, Chris, is the fact that this is a natural nest, isn't it? I mean, we've often had barn owls on Springwatch, but they've always been in boxes.
Yeah, well, the boxes are great because this was a species that declined by about 90% in the last century. And we needed to do something about it. We need to preserve the habitat, but one other thing we knew they were short of was nesting spaces. So lots of people put them up. Farmers, conservationists, bird lovers, owl fanciers. We've got 25,000 barn owl boxes up in the UK now, and 50% of the breeding population we have is in one of those boxes. So that's good, practical conservation in action, and it's working. But you know, there is another species, a species of reptile that we have in the UK, which is also surviving on the back of good, practical conservation. It's one of our most beautiful lizards, and you can find them basking on a beach north of Liverpool.
The Sefton coast, a windswept, desolate landscape. But down among the marram grass is a sheltered world, home to strange creatures. In this harsh habitat live two of our rarest animals, exotic beasts hanging on right at the edge of their range. When the temperature climbs to 10 degrees, a male sand lizard emerges from a long hibernation. He's lain torpid in his burrow for the past 6 months, and now he's on the lookout for a mate. And he doesn't have to wait long. This warm weather may not last, but he'd better watch his step. He'd seem more at home in the tropics. Sefton's dune lizards are the most colourful in the country. And his vivid markings are a dual purpose. He's beautifully camouflaged and dressed to impress. But when he breaks cover, he's quickly spotted. Time to beat a retreat. Any hope of a hot date is dashed for now. At dusk, when the temperature falls, the lizards lie low, and the night shift takes over. The dunes resound to the ratchet call of Sefton's other, rarely seen resident, the natterjack, also known as the running toad. And like the lizards, they've spent the winter underground. Now they too are desperate to breed. From his chosen puddle, a male's call carries over 1 kilometre right across the dunes, and he soon attracts attention. Unlike common toads, natterjacks breed throughout spring and summer. Many of their tadpoles die as their shallow pools dry up, but repeated spawning means at least some will survive. Not until it warms to 14 degrees does the female sand lizard emerge. She may not be as brightly coloured as the males, but she soon attracts attention. The bigger, the better, as far as her suitors are concerned. She's only in season for 10 days, and during that time, she needs to mate with as many males as she can. But the male wants to keep her all to himself, so he'll guard her for as long as possible. In 3 weeks' time, she'll lay a clutch of eggs, but she's a fair weather creature, and the setting sun signals the end of the affair. The Sefton coast may seem barren and bleak, but where common creatures struggle to survive, 2 of our rarest and most exotic have found a haven amongst the dunes.
What an animal. One of
You
my
like them, don't you?
childhood favourites. Yeah, they were. I was very lucky to be taken out and shown those when I was a kid down in Dorset. You can find them in Dorset, Hampshire, Surrey, those ones up on that coast. You get a chance to see them this summer. Certainly try to take advantage of that chance. Big thanks to Natural England, the Sefton Coast Rangers and Amphibian and Reptile Conservation have been working really hard with this species. They and other groups have done 76 reintroductions, 9,000 animals. They rear the eggs in captivity, hatch the young out quicker. They have a better overwinter survival, and those reintroductions so far are 65% effective. That's what I'm talking about when I say good practical conservation. Hats off, guys. And in fact, tomorrow on Unsprung, we've got Pete Hill from Amphibian and Reptile Conservation coming on to tell us a bit about this and some other stuff.
Just goes to show that conservation can work. If you take the avocets here at Minsmere, they were absent in the UK for about 100 years, weren't they? Then in 1947, because of management, they started to come back. And now at Minsmere, because the RSPB managed the place so well, they've got 50 pairs this year. And they manage that scrape for the avocets. But of course, other birds will make the most of it as well. And they really make the most of the food source that you get at the scrape. Let's have a look at the different birds. These are the avocets, obviously. Now, you can see the way they're feeding is they're feeling for their prey with their upturned bill, which is very different to the shovelers, which sift it. They sort of dabble, as well as the shell ducks. They sort of filter their food, which is different again to the black-headed gulls, which sort of pick and peck at it. So they're all eating from the water around the scrape, but I wanted to know what exactly they are eating. So we got someone to go down to the scrape with a pair of ladies' stockings, and they put the stockings in the water, filtered it out. I've got the stockings, and Chris has got what they managed to get out of the stockings.
Look at this fabulous microscope we've got here. It's giving us some views of some of the life that they've got there. You can see a back swimmer there at the top of the frame. These look like some perhaps beetle larvae. Look, there's a water louse. I'm trying to chase it down. Also in there, you've got lots of Daphnia. But we took a closer look at one of these samples earlier, and we found little tiny nematode worms. These are much, much smaller than the animals we've just been looking at. 1/10 of a millimetre long. This is a midge larva, a chironomid midge larva that we've got there. Another one of the back swimmers that here, much larger of course, perhaps up to 3 or 4 millimetres in length. And here a crustacean. It's a shrimp species of some kind. And all of these were found down in that scrape. What you've got there essentially is a very rich soup of protein that these birds are feeding on. They've done some sampling here, and in one area of 10 square metres, they found 1.32 kilograms of this invertebrate material, which these birds can sift out. And of course, the different techniques that the different birds use means that they're sharing that material out. So it is a very rich soup. It's a brackish area, so you get species which can tolerate both fresh and salt water. And it's also very warm because the water's shallow. 15 degrees at the weekend, that water was.
Positively
so
balmy.
Perfect breeding grounds for all of these invertebrates, which in turn means that it's perfect feeding grounds for the birds, which turn it into perfect breeding grounds for them too.
Of course, it's not just invertebrates they eat, is it? They're rather partial to a bit of fish as well. Now, we've all become fish fans thanks to our little Simon, our spineless Simon, but other people like Jack Perks have been fish fans for years, and in fact, he set himself quite a ridiculous fish challenge.
I've been given a bit of a moniker, I suppose, which I'm not sure whether I'm going to take on or not, but the fish twitcher, because I suppose I'm the only person crazy enough to go around the UK ticking off fish rather than birds. I want to try and film every freshwater fish in the UK. The idea was to do 54, and that's a give or take number. I mean, you could argue there are more, you could argue there are less, but I've kind of stuck with that. I've been doing it for the last year and a half, and I think I've done very well to get the 42. So I haven't got that many left to get. I'm on the banks of the River Wye today, and hopefully going to try and find shad. We've got 2 species of shad in the Wye I've not filmed before. I'm not expecting to be too warm in there because it's going to be pretty chilly, but I'm sure I'll power through it. I've got a small camera here that I attach to a rock, so that acts as my static cam. The only way you can describe me is a bit bonkers with what I do, with going in rivers voluntarily and swimming around trying to go after fish. I think people haven't filmed them largely because they're very difficult to film. You've got to have very clear water. Quite often the fish don't want to be filmed and they'll more than happily swim away. It may sound weird, but you get to know fish. So particularly on local rivers, I'll recognise certain fish. I haven't quite got to the point of naming them yet, but they do have different personalities, definitely. I like fish really because they've got such amazing behaviours and life stories, and although they are important for food webs, they're so much more than just a bird's lunch. A lot of people think that most fish are quite dull, like brownie, but that we've got so many amazing coloured fish, particularly the small ones. Things like gudgeon, which are quite a small, unassuming fish, beautiful markings on them. Arctic char are stunning. I mean, they're really vivid red. The males, they're almost like a Pacific salmon. Chub I've kind of got a bit of an affinity for because they're one of the first fish that I ever filmed. They'll actually eat fruit. My favourite probably be grayling. They're beautiful fish. I mean, they've got this nickname, the Lady of the Stream, which I think is very apt for them because when you look at their dorsal fin, it's a bit like a dress, and that's where the name comes from. They've all got fantastic colours and shapes and sizes. Just phenomenal what we have beneath the surface. When I see the fish I want and it's just the tip of the fin teasing me in the corner of the picture, and it's just very frustrating in that sense. Or when I'm walking up and down the river looking and I can see the fish, but as soon as I go there, whew, it's off. So it is incredibly frustrating. It's a miracle I've got any hair left, to be honest. But I am very happy when I get the shot, particularly if I get a species that I just ticked off. That's when all the hours spent freezing in a river, looking like a fool, walking up and down the street in a wetsuit, just comes together. I think it would be great to have that moniker of saying, I'm the first person and the only person to have filmed all of these fish. Well, obviously, it would have been really nice to see a shad. But I'm just as happy watching these minnows crowd around the screen. It's just magical. It's just absolutely fantastic. And it's just great to see any fish on a day out on the river.
Absolutely brilliant. Thank you, Jack Perks. He set himself a goal and he achieved it and raised the profile of fish at the same time. Brilliant work. Okay, I've come down here. There's a production village there. I've come down here to show you something a little bit special. Let's talk about rodents. Rodents, things like rats, voles, and mice in particular. They are a fantastically successful group. There are hundreds of millions of rodents living alongside us here in the UK. But what makes them so successful? Now, over the years, in the watches, we've devised tests to try to see what is their success about. First of all, what we did on Autumn Watch was we tested their agility. Look at this mouse. And being super agile like this allows them to exploit difficult to access food resources. Then on Winter Watch, we tested their food preferences. And it turns out they'll eat pretty much anything, but weirdly, they're not very interested in cheese. Who'd have thought that? Now we've devised another test. How good are mice in water? Can they swim? Now, the thing about that is that Minsmere here is a watery world. So we've seen badgers can swim. What about mice? Can a mouse swim? It's time for the Iron Mouse Challenge. Okay, what is the Iron Mouse Challenge? Well, it's actually this. Here it is. It looks slightly underwhelming, but no, it's going to deliver. Here we have the food area on that log there, and this is the moat, the water that they may have to swim across. Let's come around. We've got cameras all around it watching. Now, we've already tried to do this. We put the food there. We made the mistake of putting the food there during the day. What happened? Well, of course, if you put out a feast, people are going to come and eat it, a free feast. This was sort of brawns versus brains. The squirrel is the brawns, the crow is the brains. Boof! The squirrel tries to see him off, but the crow's got it worked out. He's going to lure that squirrel off, and then he's going to go and have a feed. Clever old crow. OK, that was during the day, but during the night, the mice came. And not just one or two. They very quickly learnt how to do things. They came in, they took the peanuts off. We reckon that one mouse took around 60 peanuts in one night. They were obviously caching them. Don't know about you, I've often found my Wellington boots packed with peanuts. I actually found one of my motorbikes wouldn't work very well, and that was because the exhaust pipe was full of peanuts, courtesy of a mouse like this. Now, you could see we put a log across the Iron Mouse Challenge to begin with, quite a big log, and they got used to that, but now we've done something different. We put this little one here. The whole question is, will they swim across this? And this is how it works. This log we can split. There we go. Okay, can you see that? Now, tonight, all they've got to do is jump across there and across there. We'll keep expanding these gaps until they have to swim. But will they swim to get the food in the Iron Mouse Challenge? Now, Yolo, let's have a look at this map. Yolo, as you know, has been on a mission. He's gone up to the north of Scotland and he's gone on and on. John O'Groats, he's been in Orkney, he's heading north again. What will he discover?
For the last few days, we've been travelling through the wild landscapes of mainland Orkney, the biggest island in this beautiful archipelago. But we also wanted to explore some of the smaller, more rugged isles too. So we sent our wildlife cameraman to an island that's close to his heart to film a very special bird.
My name's Raymond Besant and I'm a wildlife cameraman from the Orkney Islands. I'm on the island of Hoy just now, which is a really special place to me. My grandparents lived here, so our summer holidays were always spent here, exploring on the beaches, looking for wildlife and messing around really, so I've loved it ever since. For a young boy that was obsessed with wildlife, this was the perfect place to kind of nurture that passion. I'd never seen anything like it before, almost un-Orkney-like, which is kind of flat and green. You know, you come to the island of Hoy and it's like another part of Scotland. The landscape here is really dramatic, but what brings me back again and again is to watch the fulmar. In Orkney we call it the mallymac, and it's a relative of the albatross. It looks a bit understated, it's grey and white, but actually when you look at it close up, it has very soft, beautiful features. The birds that are on the cliffs just now will be preparing to lay their single egg. So the birds that are going to breed here have already paired up. I think it's easy to forget that when you see them on the cliffs like this, that actually they're a real tough ocean-going bird that uses those long, stiff wings to fly really long distances. Almost an endurance seabird really, where they'll head out right into the middle of the Atlantic from Orkney or head up to Norway to feed and then come back across to their nest sites. Straight away you see how impressive its flying skills are. And really I don't think there's a bird that can rival it on the cliffs for being the master of the updraft. that can really control those and just hang motionless in the air. They're hard not to admire when they're doing that. They can almost turn on a kind of sixpence. It makes them really quick, and it also makes them really difficult to film, so it's a real challenge to keep up with their skills. I took my first picture of a fulmar when I was 9 years old. Obviously I'm not allowed to go to the cliffs by myself at that age, but that's all I wanted to do. So the fulmar really was the first bird that got me hooked on wildlife photography, and my dream then was always I wanted to be a wildlife cameraman. And I think it's quite a daunting task thinking, how am I going to do this, because there's no set way into it. So again, I turned to the fulmar and made a documentary about its life in Orkney, really, and I've got a lot to thank the fulmar for, because now I am a wildlife cameraman, and it was the bird that helped me along the way to achieving that. It's almost kind of like meeting an old friend again when you come back to the cliffs. I think if you grow up somewhere like Orkney and Shetland, you have a really strong sense of place and a really strong sense of belonging to that place. But for me, part of that is having a connection with the wild creatures that live here, and for me, that connection is strongest when I'm sitting in the cliffs watching fulmars.
That's really inspiring, isn't it? That his passion from when he was 9 became his career. I'm very glad, though, that he changed his shorts. Love that photograph.
What a top bloke. What a top bloke. I thought, what a top bloke he was. Anyway, from the wilderness of Orkney to the streets of Bristol, we're sticking with seabirds, and this time herring gulls. We've been watching them down there on one of our remote cameras, and this is what we've been seeing during the daytime. Plenty of food being brought in to the 3 chicks, which are on the rooftop there. Here's one of the adults with that characteristic red spot. The chicks peck at it and it regurgitates a chip, which is nice.
And healthy. Lovely.
And then there's some bread. Some white bread there. Could have gone for brown if it had been a little bit more discerning. But you can see they're picking up whatever they can find in the city. Now don't worry about them going all veggie, because look at this chick here. This one has been given a mouse, but it can't keep it down. So it's regurgitating it again. But thankfully, the adult is on hand to produce some bread, so perhaps it can make a sandwich, a mouse sandwich. Always something to look forward to of an evening.
Oh,
and
look at this.
When the weather's good, they've been doing plenty of exercising. Although they've got no flight feathers at all, they're already building up their wing and leg muscles on that rooftop. Fabulous views, that. And then, of course, the weather did turn, and here you can see there's some rain on the lens, and they are huddled up on that nest, and for quite a long period the adult was brooding them, trying to keep that harsh wind and rain off of them.
It's quite exposed, isn't it? I mean, they're quite
It is
vulnerable.
exposed. It is
again,
exposed.
particularly if the weather gets bad.
Yeah, and if you've been watching them today, you'll know they've been blown about and getting soaking wet. Weather does have an impact on our wildlife, and it certainly will do so over the next couple of days. So let's find out what that impact might be from Nick Miller at the BBC Weather Centre.
Oh, hello again. It is miserable out there. This is more like autumn watch weather than spring watch. That may be being kind to the weather we had in autumn. And it's all down to this, an unusually deep area of low pressure with the wind and the rain. The low starts to move away tomorrow, taking the rain, but it stays very windy across the UK. Make no mistake, this is a difficult 24 hours for our wildlife, especially those newly fledged birds. The wrens, we saw them leave the nest earlier. They're not waterproof. Hopefully they find shelter tonight. And for the mum, Sophia Loren, looking for the food. The wind may blow the caterpillars off the leaves, the rain wash them off. She's got her work cut out for her. And we saw the barn owls earlier. Even as adults, they're not very waterproof, so they don't want to be hunting in the rain. And wind and rain together make a lot of noise. It's harder for them to hear their prey. This could be a hungry night. And those gull chicks on the roof at Bristol, it's drier tomorrow. It's still very windy, and this wind, stay away from the edge. And what about you at Minsmere? Well, it gets windier tonight. Tomorrow, that's the average speed. Gusts in excess of 40 miles an hour. That Dartford warbler nest will be all over the place. But look, from Wednesday onwards, the wind eases. It's drier, eventually a bit warmer. Not only Spineless Simon can make a comeback, the sunshine can too.
Well, he says that, but there's weather warnings out all over the country. But from our point of view, we don't see bad weather, we just see challenging weather. And that's certainly what wildlife's going to see in the next few days. So it's going to be fascinating to see how it copes with it.
Talking of challenging, I've got a challenge for whoever wants to join in fact, because you know today is the 1st of June, and the Wildlife Trust are challenging you to do 30 days wild. Basically, they want you to connect with wildlife every day of June. And whether that means anything. I mean, there are loads of ideas in here, and all this is on the website. And I don't know, I quite fancy dancing in the rain, connecting with wildlife by dancing in the rain.
What would you wear for that, mate?
Oh, I don't know. I think
something diaphanous,
well,
perhaps?
What does that mean?
What are you going to do?
Or do you know, can I tell you something else I might do? I might zwir. I might go and listen to the zwir of the garden birds. Got it in, the Springwatch.
Yes, I'm going to wash my jeans. Look, that's me grovelling on. But that's not wildlife. I'm going to probably put, I think, a pillowcase around an outside light, and that is a moth trap. I used to do that with my dad. It's very exciting. What about you, Chris?
I might dissect some roadkill.
Roadkill?
Yeah,
mate, that's gruesome.
No, hold on. A semi-squash squirrel is a great way to introduce a young person into anatomy. I used to do that with my stepdaughter. She's grown up to be a reasonably well-balanced young woman. She's probably watching this programme, if they get it in Broadmoor. I mean, but no, seriously, it's a great way of getting to people to understand how the body works.
Well, basically, any way that you want to get out to connect with wildlife. Well, you can watch us, of course, every night. That's
that's one way. Shall we have a quick look around the live cameras?
I think we should.
In the wind.
Look at those blue tits. They're getting very sort of active, aren't they?
Let's look at the blue tits. They really are. But that's nice and controlled in there, isn't it?
Look at Mum, though. She's still got that sort of mighty attraction. She's still looking rough, isn't she?
She is, yeah.
And Dartford warbler quickly. That's looking pretty good still. It's not sort of running around. But have we got time to quickly see the shoveler? That tells you what it's really like. Look at the wind there. It's howling.
And it'll be interesting, as I say, to keep an eye on all of these live cameras over the next 24 hours because they're having weather warnings, as you were saying.
Indeed, indeed. But sadly, that's all we've got time for. Do stick with us for Unsprung, which is coming up next on the Red Button and online. We've got Jen Smart from the RSPB, who's going to be talking to us about the badgers, and wildlife vet Matt Brash giving us advice on wildlife welfare in our back gardens or wherever we are.
And keep your eyes on the live cameras, as we say, Red Button online. Also, the place to go for tomorrow morning, 7 a.m. for the breakfast show with Brett Westwood. Also, he's doing a lunchtime show. And there's an afternoon show as well with Lindsay Chapman.
Gosh. Now, tomorrow night, we're going to be seeing the story behind one of the biggest wildlife tales, a headline that we had all year. And that is the release and the return of the beavers to English waters. Fascinating.
We'll also be giving you the latest from the Stickleback love saga with Spineless Si and Frisky Phil.
He's back, but can he find a mate? We'll also be taking a look at our barn owls, of course. 3 of those owlets in the chick. Will they be influenced by bad weather, as Nick Miller suggested?
All that and more tomorrow. See you then. Bye-bye.